Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the first NetSuite in a Snap webinar series by AppWrap. We're going to talk today about revenue leakage and how to prevent revenue leakage with 5 easy, safe searches. But before we start, we assume that you all are all NetSuite users and familiar with NetSuite. We are going to record this session so we could provide it later to review. We'll also provide a quick reference guide of the material and a how-to. And we encourage you to submit your questions before the end of the session. So as they come up, go ahead and submit them in the chat QA window so we could address those as they come. We'll address them at the end of the session. So for our agenda, we're going to have a quick introduction of the panelists. We're going to talk about the impacts of revenue leakage and how to identify common culprits. And we'll talk about how to recover revenue and how to prevent leakage in the future. And of course, we will leave some Q&A time at the end. Okay. So I'll start off. My name is Joshua Meary. I'm the CTO of AppWrap. I'm very passionate about democratizing technology and basically using NetSuite as a vehicle to provide more technology and more options for NetSuite clients. One of the reasons I joined AppWrap was to pursue and develop products. One of our flagship products is MindSuite, which will help locate and manage exceptions, data exceptions, and process exceptions within NetSuite. I'd like to now pass the baton to Jay.
Thanks, Josh. I think that's a good segue. So I am an accountant by training, but I've been been the business process optimization journey all along. Similar to Josh, I realized that there is significant opportunity in automating business process for the clients, especially for NetSuite users. And automation doesn't always necessarily end in efficiency. It could also end in risk reduction and things like that. And that's one of the things that has been a top of my mind, especially with our product like MindSuite and other products that we have. Thanks, Josh.
And to our panelists from the field, Penny from Wiser.
Hi, I'm Penny Patan-Hora. I'm the controller at Wiser Solutions. Wiser is a SaaS company that does in-store and online data solutions for primarily brands and retailers operating in the retail industry. I come from a different background where I first was years in public accounting, and then I segued into private and publicly held companies. I guess I was introduced to AppWrap a few years ago when we had one version of NetSuite but needed to do a complete NetSuite migration. AppWrap guided us through that whole process and then has since helped us with some other automation that we needed done. And they've really been my go-to for getting me through any issues that I have. I would say I'm passionate about timely and accurate information. So I want to put in my due diligence and kind of find out what time-saving records I can work on at the end of the month to make sure that all my information is done and I get the numbers out the door when we need to have them done. I'm always looking for ways that we can find to make things more efficient. So I'm joining today, hoping I can pass along some of the things that I've learned along my way.
Thank you, Penny. Most appreciated. The different perspective, the perspective from the field will be very important in this session and future sessions. So revenue leakage, goes unnoticed. A small leakage turns into a big problem. Just think about the plumbing in your home. And so it's estimated go ahead.
Especially what happened in the Texas region after
Yes, you're right. Didn't think about it that way, but yes, small things turn into big problems. So EY actually estimates that probably 1 to 5% of EBITDA goes unnoticed, basically there's a leakage. So if you think about that, 5% over $1 million is approximately 50K per $1 million earned. So if that turns into a lot of money lost.
Yeah, and I would say, a good accounting person is going to make up their salary in discovering these errors or efficiencies in the ways that they can recover some of this leakage. And it's important that they just have these tools, that can help them really streamline their processes to make this discovery what's happening. I would say, you look at how much has been lost, like Josh was just mentioning, 50,000. So, that's really like one junior accountant, and maybe part of an engineer. It may be something that you need to get your business to be operating efficiently going in the future. One thing else is this, usually EBITDA and revenues are going to tagline with the order to cash process of a company. And that's really just kind of like operating on a treadmill. You just think about all the data that keeps coming in, the old data, the new data, and it's hard to keep up. And if you don't have the proper procedures in place, things are going to get lost, and easily that revenue is going to be leaked right out of your system without having those proper tools in place.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I may.
Go for
Sorry,
it.
if I may add, hold on, give me 1 second. Okay, if I may add, the automation opportunity is significant in this area. For example, we had this customer where they are having multiple tiers. They had a tier 1 customer and tier 2 customers. They had an issue with their system. They ended up charging tier 1 price, as simple as that. And before they realized, they lost $10 million in additional revenue that they could have charged, because the pricing difference was so different between tier 1 customer and tier 2 customer, right? So that's, those are learnings that, we definitely think, that's the reason why we built this product out, or we look out for our customers when we go and talk about it and say, how can we identify these potential exceptions? And a small, and given the automated nature of our business and the volume nature of our business, a small issue could suddenly cascade into a larger revenue leakage.
I think we'll touch upon volume as a proponent of a revenue leakage. Yes, as volumes grow up, then leakage becomes a little bit more trickier, and obviously the swings are much larger. So yes, volume does play a significant role in revenue leakage. I want to mention quickly the top reasons we identified for revenue leakage. The primary one is really incorrect data or incorrect data entry. So if you think about unapproved transactions sitting out there, or unclear payment terms, or basically if you're just messed up the start and end date for a subscription, right there, you'll lose money right there. Another area would be unchecked discounts. There's also unsent invoices and unmonitored profitability, sales of cost sold, cost of sale, cost of goods sold, cost of good services sold, et cetera, et cetera. Penny, I believe you have a very unique perspective on some of these items.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having one little technology problem. My laptop is running out of battery here.
Okay, so we could go to Jay. Jay, maybe if you.
Yeah, no, absolutely fine, right? Like, as in, if you look at like even discounts for that matter, like the example I was just throwing at this point in time, right? Like if you have a discount that is not correctly given, the customer is going to be not happy, right? And if you contractually, if you gave an additional discount, you may not have the potential to collect that anymore, because the customer experience is going to be affected. You cannot go back to the customer and say, I gave an incorrect customer a discount, right? And also discounts gets really complicated. I've got scenarios where there's a customer who has a conglomerate connected to with them, and they sell it to the group, to the parent company, and you have to give that specific discount to all the companies in that subsidiaries. And then there could be a tier and volume based discount that you might have to give. So it gets complicated, and having a good sense of what the discount is very important.
I would say, like I could add a couple things on here. The top revenue leakage, incorrect data entries, it happens all the time. It doesn't matter if your system is automated, if there's a manual process that is interfering, there's always an opportunity for something to either get entered incorrectly or somehow get processed along the line that's incorrect. So you need these systems to kind of monitor how it goes through your accounting system. And if you don't present the proper invoice to a customer, they're just not going to pay it. And this is the way that you're going to get cash into your business. So it's really important that things are accurate as they're getting sent to the customers. Another thing we've found along the way is unsent invoices. You think you've sent them, but in this day of technology, it's so easy to say, even in a previous place I worked at, we had so many times that inboxes are not being properly monitored. So you could send an invoice and it never arrived to the accounting team, and it's not going to get processed because that employee has left. So don't assume that if you don't hear from somebody that there's like a problem with actually payment of your invoice. It just may be simply that they haven't received it.
So I wanted to make, there was a notion that came up as you were speaking, Penny, is like, it's almost like Murphy's Law. If something wrong can happen, it will happen, right? It's not that the customer doesn't want to pay. The customer doesn't even know that he's supposed to pay, right? I mean, the customer is not going looking for invoices. I mean, a good customer would know that he has to pay, but yeah, I didn't get the invoice.
Talking about that, Josh, you should actually have a separate session just to talk about the spam sections in NetSuite, where if you don't set it up correctly, emails from NetSuite is going to go as spam, right? And
right.
It's amazing. Yeah. Like as simple as that could change a big difference in how the emails are being received. Very nice.
Yeah, I can add, and we had in a previous employment, previous place I worked at, we would run searches. We had, say, over 10,000 customers. We could run searches, and you can tell with a good search, you could pop that into Excel, you can filter and sort, and you will know in a moment's notice where any customer is in the billing process for that month, where they are in their subscription. And so you're able to keep track and be proactive in finding out to make sure that you have all the information you need at the time that you need to bill it. But it's only with those, enhancements that you have to be able to get that work done efficiently.
Sure. And the first layer would be safe searches, right? A layer above that would be NetSuite. But let's we could dive into the details where, the first layer of defense is the safe searches that are here to save the day. So if we think about the process or the areas we spoke about earlier, then we could look at these basically these top searches in the order to cash areas, where we could look at these items. While you're reading the slide, Penny, if you'd like to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had mentioned before about this concept of a treadmill, but just imagine that you're at a company that even if it's a small company or a medium-sized company, at that point, they could have pretty significant growth spurts going on. And whether you have, lots of little invoices or some of the larger invoices, there's just so much stuff that needs to keep being added into your existing accounting structure. And there's just a whole lot more to keep track of. And all these points along the way is how that invoice is going to flow through your accounting system. And as a controller or somebody working in that order to cash, you want to make sure that you're designing your procedures and you've got your filters and you've got your saved searches and you've got your checklists, all to make sure that this data is flowing through the system to minimize the amount of errors that are coming out of it, so that you spend less time fixing those errors and more time either being proactive or being, working on automation or whatever else that you need to do for your team.
Awesome, Jay.
And the challenge for our customers is that they're growing rapidly, right? And they they have a process that they sort of think it works well when they are small, and they tend to force that for a larger company too, and they don't realize it. It's like that frog and the hot water synergy, right? Like it's like when things change, we don't realize that we're becoming a bigger company. We just tend to use the same process that we were using as a smaller company. And at one point in time, there is a personal change. A person who's like very passionate about it is gone, and there's another person who's come in who's doing it by a checklist, and he's not capturing things like that. So yeah, definitely there's a lot of issues like this. Like even for us, even though we are a small company, we realized that when we send out invoices, that customers it was bouncing because the customer changed their domain name and they did not accept emails from the old domain name anymore, and we never updated in our system. Things like that, as simple as that, could create a revenue leakage for the company.
Awesome.
Josh, back.
Thank you. So how about we start diving into our top 5. So number 1, unapproved sales orders. So if you think about it, if you have that sales rush, right? Go ahead, salespeople, go ahead, book your orders. And if there's an approval process or NetSuite, if you cannot process or invoice if the sales order is not approved, basically you got all your salespeople running to create all these sales orders, bring in money, and then these are just sitting there. And it's so interesting to see that this happens, I would say, at 100% of companies out there. You work so hard to bring in an order, and that order, there's always 1 or 2 orders. I mean, some intentionally, some unintentionally, will just sit there and wait, right? And if you're not approving the sales order, you can never collect on it.
So, I'll give you an example. I had an inventory company that I was working with, and they had to ship out something based on the sales order approval. The sales ops team who was approving the sales order was delaying in their approval, and then comes month end, they're rushing to have these approvals, and all the shipment happened. It put in so much strain on the fulfillment center because now the fulfillment center has to work over the the nights and weekends to get that going, right? Josh, something as simple as that would actually make life so much different if they have a daily track, approve every single sales order that's come into the system.
Correct. I agree. 100%. I want to mention again that we will provide a handout that will have detailed information on how to create these safe searches, but you could see on the slide, we basically put like the highlights of how to basically run through that. So you would create this safe search, you would go ahead and safe search is new. It would be a transaction type. I'm just going to highlight how to read the bullet points here. So we create a new safe search, which would be transaction type. If the type would be sales order after that. Within the criteria, you would set type equals sales order, then status is sales order pending approval, and mainline is true. And again, the handout will have all this detailed out and how to provide that. And another note is, of course, is when you're creating these safe searches, it's not only about how you're filtering the data, it's also what what columns you're going to present to the end user, right? So it's important to think about how to set the criteria, but also what data to present, because you do not want to overwhelm the user with the data on the result of the safe search. I'm going to be bold here and say, of course, there's much more of advanced usages for safe searches. You could trigger emails to be sent from NetSuite, et cetera, download. In my experience, sending emails, that's overwhelming. Downloading stuff and working on it offline is also, they tend to get lost. I'll just mention, this is where Minesweep, for instance, comes into play, where you can manage all this information and this exception management within NetSuite. But I'll defer on that topic to later. Number 2, discounts.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, no, that's my favorite pet peeve, right? Like we have this, 8 out of 10 customers use Salesforce or some other CRM system.
Right.
They're pushing in the transactions from Salesforce into NetSuite. We are assuming that discount calculation that was done in the CRM is correct, right? But we could always have that cross-verified here with the NetSuite. If we had maintained the pricing master for the customer, you could then do a verification and see whether that makes sense or not, or at least have somebody would manually check it if as part of the previous approval process and see the discount. Things like ramp up discounts, how do you handle ramp up discounts and how do you capture that in an order such that you're not, you sign a contract with a ramp up discount, but you end up actually giving them a ratable discount throughout 3 years. It will have a contract in compliance problem, right? Things like that needs to be considered. Penny, your thoughts on discounts?
Yeah, I mean, you could have things where, there's a one-time, discount, but then, and also it depends on how you display it on your invoice, because sometimes if a customer sees that discount, they think that they get that in perpetuity, like that discount never ends. And I've got one customer right now that I don't know where the discount came from. It's small, but they have a payment discount. So if they pay early, they have a discount. I don't even know if I can really find it in a contract, but it's just something that's been kind of carried over. And in some ways, it works for us, but it's other times I've seen discounts where it may be not necessarily a payment discount, but there's some other, either a bundling discount or something else. And then they go and they change the bundle or something like that. And so the discount really is no longer applicable. So now how do you bill on that recurring subscription? Say if the customer still continues, but they've changed their subscription, how does that discount then get either disclosed or applied? And how do you want to show that to your customer? And that's usually guidance from your sales team or your executives and stuff like that. Will come back and say, this is how we want to handle that going forward.
I just want to make a comment on the. Go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
Sure. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Josh. I was going to tell you about, the payment discount is my pet peeve. Like it throws spanner into the whole thing, and you're like, oh my God, now I have to go and do like 10 extra steps to account for that, and and we don't even know, and the collectors do not know, and they realize that they're short paid, and we are trying to follow up, and I know that's a nightmare. But
so thanks. So I just want to mention here that discounting, how you do discounting in NetSuite, it could be done in multiple ways, right? At the header level or the line level, you could even introduce custom discounting, your own formulas, or suite scripting at the sales order level, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really, the Safe Search is a guidance, but of course, you have to think about how you're doing your discounts and then how to adjust these appropriately. So this is just a guidance. And then of course you could decide where your threshold is or your tolerance is, where to trigger a result in the criteria. I want to move on to number 3 on our hit list, and that would be duplicate customers. So basically duplicate customer creates issues with collections because who do I collect from? Whom did I send the invoice to? Revenue recognition, am I actually recognizing this appropriately? So it also could be an issue with, I received a payment, where do I apply the payment? So it's not only the fact that you have a duplicate customer, it impacts almost everything downstream. And I want to, before I open the floor, this Safe Search that we looked at right now relies on the built-in functionality in NetSuite to detect duplicate records, duplicate entities. So if you're not familiar with duplicate detection, by all means, look at setup company duplicate detection. I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that, because if you look at this Safe Search for duplicate customers, it's a trivial Safe Search. And by the way, you could do the same for vendors, etc.
One small anecdote I'll tell you about duplicate customers, and then I'll keep quiet. I know we're running out of time. So we had this customer where, I was looking at a Minesweep probe at the month end. We were looking at it for the close, and I'm suddenly seeing a negative revenue, a negative AR balance for a customer. And I'm like, why do you have a negative AR balance for this customer? Let's go check it in. And they had two instances of the same customer. They created a credit memo for the second instance, and they actually had an invoice in the first instance, right? And I'm like, that's not correct. You guys need to fix this ASAP before you close the year and go to public at your numbers, right? Sorry. That's something which comes to my mind always. It's not trivial to have a duplicate customer. It could have an accounting implication too.
I think this also goes to Penny's point about time wasting and recovering staff and or assigning staff appropriately. Penny, any thought on this?
Well, it's funny. In the last month, I have a law firm that we work with. They have found another Wiser company, and they tried to send me a statement that includes not only Wiser Solutions, but another Wiser. And I said, wow, this is pretty incredible that I have all these invoices I've never seen. And they're quite old. I don't even know what service did you provide. Anyway, it turns out there was another Wiser corporation somewhere in the United States. And they accidentally included that on a statement to me. So, of course, I informed them we were not paying their invoices. Well, we stick with ours. So, but yeah, it was a little bit of a waste of time to figure out like what happened and, you know, and who was this other Wiser.
Thanks. Hopefully they weren't wiser than Wiser, the other Wiser. Okay.
Yeah, we've all figured it out.
Okay, so I want to go over Safe Search number 4, then I'll just flash the slide for the 5th one, and then we'll go to closing remarks. But I do want to talk about overdue invoices. So basically, and we were talking about volume, right? So if missing invoices or overlooked or unpaid invoices basically just linger out there, you're just not collecting. So what this Safe Search is basically, you know, a simple Safe Search to look at basically days overdue, which is automatically calculated by NetSuite. The nice thing about these Safe Searches is also taking advantage of functionality that is built into NetSuite. But I also, and I know with Wiser, because I work closely with Wiser, is Wiser it tracks also invoices, communication, email communication at the invoice level. So we've actually developed together a Minesweep or a Minesweep probe. A Safe Search is basically to sniff out all invoices that had no communication in the last X number of days. And then we know that, hey, it's not related to the number of days overdue, actually, but if there is lack of activity on that invoice. So
yeah,
Penny,
we've been noticing a lot of our, I shouldn't say a lot, but we have some very, very large corporations that we work with that have either their own proprietary or third-party portals that they use. And these invoices need to be uploaded into these other electronic forms in order to get processed. So there is no way I can export from NetSuite into those portals. So anyway, there's a chance that there could be something that could be forgotten or something like that. So we just need a reminder that to confirm, like, did these invoices, you know, that haven't been sent from the system, have they actually been uploaded into the appropriate portals for the customers?
So I want to mention quickly is maybe for future NetSuite in a Snap session would be robotic processing automation, RPA, and the last, what I like to call last mile integration. As we're saying, if you have a customer or a portal that you cannot integrate with, and you need to move data from NetSuite into their portals, potentially, you know, this is where a bot can help. But I will look at creating a new future sessions about RPA and NetSuite, which I think will be very interesting. So I just want to flash this last one, this contract renewal management. The concept here is basically if you have renewals, maybe renewals are not getting approved, maybe you forgot to create a renewal, and the idea is to follow up on this monitoring. So this example here specifically, and the reason I have that little workflow there, this is based on if you have the Suite app, the software vertical contract renewal Suite app, and it adds the contract object. So you basically, we can create Safe Searches on that and monitor renewals. I think I'd like to, if you don't mind, Jay and Penny, I'll skip the discussion on this one and kind of see if there are any questions. I know we're literally out of time. So Mary, if there's any one or two
I see
questions.
one question. I see one question here. It says,
Okay.
Maybe I can take this up and say, talked about Safe Searches, their advantages. What about their disadvantages? You know, I definitely want to say, like, you know, Safe Searches tend to have not a very formatted application, right? And if you're not very careful before validating it and rolling it out, you may tend to have duplicate lines because it's an object-based search. And those are the two different disadvantages I could think about from a safe search perspective. Josh?
Safe searches, yes, it's because it could be the Wild West. I've noted this at many customers, and I'm sure the people participating is that you have to be wise about how you set up your safe search, which audience you give access to. And then there tends to be people make copies, and then it's just like, as I said, sometimes it gets to be the Wild West, and then you have to go in and clean up the safe searches. So yes, it's managing the permissions around who can create safe searches, or being good about naming conventions, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I would say a disadvantage. Yeah.
I think let me just take one more question I see here, Josh, and then maybe we'll just wrap up this session. The last question probably should go to Penny. It talks about what other tools are there, what's so special about Minesweep. So I think we mentioned it a few times. So Penny.
Of course, with NetSuite, you can always take a report and export it into Excel, and then everything is offline and you're working outside of your system.
Mm-hmm.
There are other searches that you can have within NetSuite that are ones that would be, say, like a saved report or a saved search, where you would actually click on that button and then run the report, export whatever you needed. The thing that we've used with Minesweep is that we've got it in a nice handy dashboard. I can go in there and I can look at, say, 6 searches right away and just kind of click right off mentally and just see, yep, that one's fine, that's fine, that's fine. And I know going into my month end how many things that we need to clean up before I can actually process and run revenue recognition. It saves a lot of time. We run a lot of, all of our P&L is by department. So I want to make sure that my revenue is in the right department before I run the revenue recognition entries. I can do all that within some of those searches I have set up. I also have little tricks that Josh has created for us, just to make sure that the data we've got some accuracy things that we're trying to track. So that's in our searches. And then even on another thing that's not revenue leakage, but like a vendor, like when's the last time you got an invoice from a vendor? Are you missing a critical vendor invoice before you can close your month end? Maybe you've got something that goes into your COGS. Maybe you've got something that's in some other thing that you're monitoring, and if you're missing the vendor, your records are not accurate for the month end close.
I just want to elaborate before I go to the last slide, although we're 3 minutes over, is impacts. Huge impacts is like when we're monitoring incorrect data in general. Mentioning is setting up items in NetSuite is critical. And if you think about that, impact on purchases, on sales, on inventory, custom inventory, et cetera, et cetera. And then you mentioned expenses and classification. So also that's where, although you could have safe searches, is show me all, departments that are missing data or employees that are missing classification information. So there's a lot that we can do there. So of course, as we're already like 3 or 4 minutes over time. So if you have more questions, or if you want to spend more time with us, feel free to schedule. You could schedule 15 minutes with me for Q&A. I could, help you out with your safe searches, and the information is right there. You could go ahead and have a look at the app, bit.ly AppWrap revenue leakage link, or you could email me directly at jmeary@appwrap.tech. So before we go away, I'd like to thank Penny very much for joining and providing her perspective from the field. Jay, I want to thank you for your inputs and your point of view as a CPA. And I want to thank Mary, who's been in the background helping us with all the tech. And that's it. Thank you. And this will be available as a handout, and this will be posted on our website. So thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Penny.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.